What is going on, everyone? This is Drew Code Sports Talk, and I am your host, Andrew Wright. And coming from you from Anaheim, California, is my co-host, Cody Johnson. Cody.
Hey, everybody. What is going on? Welcome to Drew Code. Drew, so sorry to interrupt you, man. I've been used to just jumping on right after the intro music, and I forgot to, let you lead the way, which you normally do on a normal episode. And we're back together for a new episode, so it's kind of exciting. So forgive me for the interruption. I'm getting used to this right now. But anyways, before we get started, you guys, please go subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and don't forget to follow us on social media, all at Drew Code Sports Talk. Drew, man, so nice to see you, man. How you been?
Doing good, man. Work has been crazy. Probably an understatement, but it's been a little crazy. It's been good though. I mean, we're getting things done, which is good. Trying to get in the swing of things for Sanger West. A lot of new changes have been going on, so finally we're kind of starting to get some consistency, I guess would be the best word to describe it, where now things are kind of falling into place. And so now, the kids, of course, always have an issue with it, with whatever changes. But, eventually it'll kind of die down. But, other than that, it's been going good. Basketball has been in full force. Unfortunately, I haven't been to many of the practices because I take my kids to school every morning. So I cannot go to the morning practices, which sucks. And of course, all the boys, after I, hadn't been there in 3 practices, are like, "Coach, are you ever coming back or what?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm coming back. I'm just, have little children." "Oh, how come your wife doesn't do it?" Dude, I'm not going to have this conversation with you. But anyway, other than that, it's good. Just been busy. Kids doing sports, both of them, both doing soccer, daughters doing volleyball. Man, it's been a lot. So, but other than that, man, it's been good. So how have you guys been doing?
We've been good, man. Same, busy. I can empathize with your players about, when are you coming back? I feel like that every week when I'm doing Drew Code alone here. I just don't know when I'm ever going to see you again. And all we have now is Marco Polo. Although I'm completely tongue-in-cheek on that one. I already know the deal, and it's a good poke in the fun with you about that. But Haley, our youngest, she's doing sports as well. She's doing volleyball, and that's a work in progress. And so we're going to every other school that's around the city to go to a game, and then she has practice. And so I am trying to make it a point to attend practices, which is tough because they're kind of in the middle of the afternoon, so that I'm leaving work and watching the practices, and I have to go back to work, or I take work home. So but I have to be honest, it may be a drag, but I wouldn't change it at all. I'd keep doing this 1,000 times over if I could, because this is just something I enjoy doing, which is kind of weird to say. And then get to be a sports dad, which has always been something I've wanted to do. So it's been pretty cool. But just busy with work. In the hospitality industry, we're in what's called budget season. So we're pretty much busy crunching numbers and in meetings about what we're not going to spend or what money we may or may not make for the next year. So it's a lot of stress. So I'll probably be feeling anxious until about November. And then that's when it might go away. And then the new year starts following that. And then it's all about, how much money can we save? Did you not make your budget? Why is that? Or whatever the case may be. So, and then of course we have our Raiders to, make sure that our stress levels are at all-time highs because of how they play. So, I don't know what more we can ask for in life,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for real, I think that's a good way to start is talk about the Raiders. This is a classic Raider game. This is a classic how do the Raiders lose this week type of a game. I had told you that what I like to do is on the ESPN fantasy app, excuse me, there is a thing that you can do where you can they basically have the spread for the under overs for the games, and you pick who you believe is going to win, and if you bet the under or over basically. And so I like doing those, and I saw the line, and I believe it was Raiders favored at I want to say it was 4.5, maybe 5.5. I don't quite remember, but I remember instantly going, Bryce Young is not the quarterback anymore. It's going to be Andy Dalton. He's a veteran. Andy Dalton has cooked us many, many times before. And for some reason, he's one of those quarterbacks that the Raiders, doesn't matter what kind of defense they have, what kind of offense they have, we cannot figure him out. And so I just kind of had that feeling. And it's just one of those classic games that not even necessarily just Andy Dalton, but a veteran quarterback in general, when it reminds me of when Geno Smith benched Eli Manning for the first time. And it was just a classic, the Raiders are going to lose this game. Everyone's like, this is so stupid. And I can't believe the Giants are doing this. This makes zero sense. Why would they even trust Geno Smith? And so all of a sudden, Geno Smith looks like a superstar. And then the next 3-4 weeks, he looked awful. And they're like, all right, put Eli Manning back.
Yeah.
And so that's just what it reminded me of is it's the classic Raider game where the quarterback who's struggling gets benched. They put in the backup, and the Raiders, for some reason, always lose those games. It's just, since I've been watching the Raiders, it always happens. It does not matter who's the defense, who's on offense, who's the coach. It does not matter. They always lose those games. And so this just felt like one of those games. And of course, Andy Dalton goes absolutely off, over 300 yards, 3 tutties. We got to him twice. We sacked him twice. So, there's a win there. But Chuba Hubbard absolutely ate us up, over 100 rushing yards on 21 carries. Miles Sanders had a touchdown. He had 7 carries, 17 yards. So not very productive in the run game per se, but he was efficient, obviously, when he did get into the game. But Chuba Hubbard was obviously the number one running back. Deontay Johnson all of a sudden comes alive and goes for 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard had 5 catches, 55 yards, and also a touchdown. So just ridiculous types of numbers for the Panthers after what happened to them, previously. And it's just a classic Raider game, man. And Gardner Minshew, I will say this. He wasn't terrible, but I really put this loss on Luke Getsy, and I had already told you this. Luke Getsy really did not get Gardner Minshew in a rhythm. And for all intents and purposes, and for argument's sake, every quarterback in the NFL needs to get in rhythm. It does not. If Andy Dalton gets shut down twice on the first 2 drives, Andy Dalton does not put up 300 passing yards. Or if he does, it's in garbage time. But because he got into a rhythm so early, he was in the rhythm for the rest of the game. Gardner Minshew never got in a rhythm. They put in Aiden O'Connell. I wasn't really impressed with Aiden O'Connell at all. I felt like he played a lot of passes safe. And, of course, Carolina's playing back. So, those little passes turn into some big gains here and there. But to me, he was not impressive at all. And just both of those guys never really got into a big rhythm that we needed. And you have to have it. If you're Tom Brady, if you're Bryce Young, you have to get into a rhythm. And if you don't have that rhythm, it's not going to go well for you. And obviously, as you've seen the first 2 weeks in Carolina, the first 2 games, Bryce Young never got into a rhythm. Andy Dalton got into a rhythm, And it's not like these coaches are watching these quarterbacks going, oh, Bryce Young or Andy Dalton's obviously the better quarterback, but let's throw out Bryce Young because he's the number one pick. No, this is the NFL. It's okay, who's better? Okay, Bryce Young was obviously the better quarterback, but he did not get in rhythm. And that's a problem. And so Andy Dalton comes into the game, and yes, he's got these high numbers, but it does help that they got into that rhythm quickly. I think you're going to see Andy Dalton start to struggle a little bit. I think Carolina is going to come back to earth. But in this game, you have, as a Raider defensive coordinator, and this is on Patrick Graham, in my opinion, in this point, is that you have to know the quarterback, they're going to want to get him in a rhythm. How do we get him out of a rhythm? Put a lot of pressure on him, and I don't think they ever did that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was telling you earlier today on Marco Polo that I found interesting was, even I'll just say the first 3 defensive series that the Raiders had, it just seemed like we weren't as tenacious as we were the first 2 games. We didn't seem to be aggressive at all in terms of pressuring Andy Dalton to get him to make any mistakes. We were letting the run game kind of develop for them and let them get in rhythm. I found that very interesting, and I found that very alarming because, if there was ever a game that I would suspect that we would, lack for a better word, just crap the bed on, would have been when we played the Ravens. I would have thought that offense would have just ate up our defense if our defense wasn't for real. But what we found in the Ravens game is they actually stood tall. They were able to pressure Lamar Jackson. They were able to create additional opportunities for the offense. And here we were last week with, coming back from 10 points down and then defeating the Ravens. And I think this is one of the things I'm also disappointed with is not only our defense and how non-aggressive they seem to be during the entire game, is I totally bought into Antonio Pierce was going to have our Raiders respecting the Panthers because, and again, I mentioned this to you and I said this kind of on the show, but the Panthers are a professional football team. They didn't just walk off the street. They're not just a bunch of bums. They may not have played great the first 2 weeks, but I mean, these are grown men with pride. They're in the NFL for a reason. They would make almost any other roster if they were free agents or whatever the case may be. They're not just some nobody team that anyone can walk all over. And I was hearing people saying that the best college football team can beat this NFL team. And I'm here to tell everybody, absolutely not the case. It would be a dog walk and the Panthers would be walking that team. They would not lose at all. I'd be surprised if they gave up any points, if I'm being honest. But point being is the Carolina Panthers are a professional football team. And I was kind of disappointed that the Raiders didn't respect the Panthers. At least, like, one of the things that you can respect with Bill Belichick during his years running the Patriots is even if he went against, let's say, the Bills, the Jets, the Dolphins, when they were at the lowest of lows, as poor as they were ran in the 20 years that Bill Belichick was a head coach of the Patriots, he respected them every time that they played because you have to respect your opponents. You can get got on any given Sunday. And I felt like the Raiders fell into the trap where they slept on the Panthers. They didn't come to play. The offense couldn't get in rhythm, which is, in my opinion, it's all on Luke Getsy. I don't know how you play call like that and think that that's productive at all because Gardner Minshew couldn't get in rhythm. Our run game couldn't get in rhythm. Our offensive line can't stop a nosebleed. So we just didn't come ready to play, and that's what's disappointing. Antonio Pierce had an interesting remark where he said that there were some players that made business decisions, and it sounds like there were some players that just didn't try during the game or gave up. So I'm curious to see how the Raiders will respond, as the weeks leading up to week 4. We have a pretty big matchup with the Browns, and not saying that the Browns are a bad team, but they're good defense. And, I don't want to treat the Browns like we treated the Panthers where we slept on them and we didn't respect, didn't prepare for them like an NFL team, like what we should have. Yeah. One of the things defensively that I was concerned with is Max Crosby, I think, is more injured than what we were led to believe this whole game. Yeah. There was not that tenacious pressure that we're used to seeing. And some part of me was thinking, okay, maybe he's letting off the throttle a little bit because he goes 100% every single snap. And 3 games in a row almost, he didn't miss a single snap until there were some series in the Panthers game where he actually came off the field for a rotation and actually got a break. But I think that was just them playing him on a pitch count, so to speak, because of his injury. And I think it's not just an ankle. I think it's a partial knee because that's what he was working against last season. And you could just tell when he was coming up to the tackle, when he was coming up for that pressure, is the pressure that I didn't feel like that offensive lineman put a lot of moves on Max Crosby to negate him. I felt like Max Crosby was hindered by an injury and he just couldn't go Max Crosby's initial power. He was just kind of going with what his body can produce. And I would say we probably got Max Crosby at 40% because there's no way that Max Crosby could not have made Andy Dalton uncomfortable that entire game. There was one or a couple of plays where he got him to move out of the pocket, or I think we even got a pressure on him. But for that entire game, for Max Crosby not have his fingerprints on that game, considering it's the Panthers and they don't have the greatest offensive line, but you figure that you can definitely you feel like that they can definitely at least get home to where they can, they can create a little chaos and not let him get so comfortable. That's just what it seemed like, is that he was just too comfortable that entire day.
Yeah, and I don't want to keep dumping on Andy Dalton like he's not a respectable quarterback. I do think that, and I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying I do kind of feel like we're not giving him his due a little bit where, yeah, listen, he's an NFL quarterback through and through. I think he's now in the point of his career where he's going to be a backup. Obviously he might get a few more starts in Carolina, and we'll see what happens after that. Maybe he finishes the year as the starter for Carolina. But do I see him being a starter, going forward? I don't. I don't still think he's going to be doing that. But, listen, he's a good quarterback. He's a veteran quarterback. He's in the league for a reason still. It's not like he's just this trash player and, just hit the game lottery or anything. He played really well. I mean, he absolutely cooked us, and there's no question about that. I agree with you. I think there's something wrong, or I think there's something a little more wrong with Max Crosby than what he's telling the team, because it sounds like he's not telling the whole truth. And Wilkins was decent. Who's our other defensive, lineman who can get a lot of pressure. But overall, the defense is only as good as what your offense is going to end up being. Your defense can only hold on for so long until, they just can't do it anymore. And I felt like that's what happened today. It was, not today, on Sunday, was that, the defense was on there, and they gave up a few, and then all of a sudden Carolina stalled for a while. It was 14-7 for a while. And then all of a sudden, we just throw an interception or go 3 and out, or just there was way too many run on first down, get 1 yard, run on second down, get 1 yard. Okay, pass on third down. Well, the defense is going to know you're passing on third down. Or there was a lot of run on first down, pass on second down, incomplete, run on a 3rd and long, or a 3rd and 8, or a 3rd and 9, or a 3rd and set. It was dude, stop running it all the time on third down. Now they know that's your go-to move. When you throw it earlier in the downs, then you're going to run it on third down. And if you're running it early on the downs, they know you're going to throw it on third down. So it was just it's such an obvious, and to your credit, I think you make a great point. This is a Madden type offense where it's you run on first and second down, and if that doesn't work, you're just going to pass it. You're not trying to demoralize your opponent. You're just trying to get that win, and that's what it reminds me of. It's a very accurate accurate thing that you said, because I 100% agree with it. I just think it's basic crap that's not working, yet we keep going with it. And it's like, dude, this is not working.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on from the Raiders because it's only going to make me more mad. Let's move on to some other games. Cody, I'll let you start this first.
Okay, so of course we've got, we're in California, so of course we got Niners fans surrounding us almost. And of course, LA Rams fans, which, Drew, you're married to an LA Rams family. So of course,
Yes.
That's pretty much what's going on 90% of the time. So anyways, I was just curious to know. So of course, the Niners blew a lead to the Rams, and ultimately the Rams walked away with the victory. The Niners are suffering through a lot of injuries from key players. A lot of them did not play on Sunday. I will make note, though, that one player that held out majority of the offseason that got his contract did not really play very well in Brandon Ayuk. So I don't know if the Niners should be worried about that. But in general, though, Drew, do you think the Niners should be panicking right now?
I think the Niners should be panicked somewhat because, listen, Brock Purdy actually played really well. Let's give him his due. And Jawan Jennings, an absolute career day. 11 catches on 12 targets, 175 receiving yards, 3 tutties, all 3 touchdowns thrown by Brock Purdy. Those were his only 3. He was only sacked once. So Purdy, for all intents and purposes, was good. But it seemed like it was Jawan Jennings or nobody. And the thing is Brandon Ayuk, as you said, kind of a no-show. Ronnie Bell, my brother-in-law Neo, shout out to Neo, is a big Niner fan, and he's done with Ronnie Bell. Like, he does not want Ronnie Bell anywhere near the 49ers facility ever again. Jordan Mason had 2 catches. Kyle Juszczyk had 1. It's Brandon Ayuk had 5 catches on 10 targets. And then it was Eric Salbert with 2 catches on 2 targets. Ronnie Bell, 1 catch on 3 targets. Jordan Mason, 2 catches on 2 targets. Kyle Juszczyk, 1 catch on one target. So the ball is not being spread out. Whereas you look at Matthew Stafford on the other side, where he doesn't have Nakua. He does not have Cooper Kupp. He goes 4 catches to Tutu Atwell on 5 targets, 1 catch to Demarcus Robinson on 4 targets, 3 catches to Jordan Winnington on 3 targets, 2 catches by Kyron Williams on 2 targets, 3 catches by Colby Parkinson on 5 targets, 3 catches on Tyler Johnson on 4 targets. So he's spreading the ball out. And I think this is the one issue that I see with Brock Purdy is if he doesn't have Deebo Samuel, if he doesn't have Brandon Ayuk, if he doesn't have a healthy Kittle, that offense doesn't look the same. No Christian McCaffrey. There's no one else bailing him out. And again, I think Purdy had a great game. I don't think he's the reason they lost. But at the same time, when you're trying to make a comeback and you know that Jawan Jennings is having a day and you just go double him and that's all you have to do, that's a good recipe. I wish in at least coaching basketball, it was just the one guy, and going into the second half, we'd be like, just face guard that guy. Don't let any, and then everyone else guard their guy. How we normally play defense, and that's how we would win. That's how we would catch up, because that guy's going to start getting frustrated. That's a great way to come back. Like, you don't always want to have to, but if that is the way you're going to have to do it, that's a great way. And I think that's what the Rams did is, okay, guys, we got to start coming back. We got to start scoring some points. Double Jawan Jennings. Don't let him have another catch, and let everyone else try and do it. And Brandon Ayuk said, I got my bag. I don't care about anything else, and is not looking great. And here's the thing. I think Brandon Ayuk is a good receiver. And I don't think he was, in my opinion, I don't think he was deserved that money. I don't think he's that good. I don't think he deserved to be one of the higher paid receivers, but that's just me personally. But this also goes to show you why getting rid of or not going to training camp, not doing these preseason games, not being a part of all this team stuff, it really can affect you. Even if you've been on the team for however many years he's been on the team now, it does not matter. If you don't have that connection right away, it's going to take you a while to start getting into that habit. And I think you're seeing it full force. And when they needed him the most, he's not ready.
Yeah, I think if I were the Niners, I don't know if I'm completely panicking, but I would be worried. Like, you got George Kittle who missed this week, who's normally an Iron Man. Although granted, he does get injured quite a bit throughout the season. Deebo Samuel is going to be out for a few weeks at least. Christian McCaffrey, who knows when he's coming back. Those are like three pivotal players, not including defensive players that are getting injured right now. So I think if I'm the Niners, what I'm concerned with is blowing a fourth quarter lead to a division rival. And then also too, like the Brandon Ayuk thing, I think there is something to this because training camp, OTAs, preseason, it just shows how important it is. I mean, just to get timing down with your offense, your quarterback, you're getting your game shape in, like it feels like Brandon Ayuk is still in the middle of training to get his endurance down. But, for as much hassle as that was caused in this offseason because of his holdout, I don't know. There's just not a lot of production coming from what he's done in these 3 games so far, considering last season, it was a great year, but for the most part, definitely need to see more from him to have him be worth, the big holdout, the big payday that he got. Because right now, you would think like, oh, we don't need Deebo Samuel, not a big deal. And yet, so if I'm the 49ers, I would be a little bit panicked just because the injuries, the production that you're getting from Brandon Ayuk. I mean, fortunately for Juwan Jennings for being there, I don't know how competitive that game would have been had they not had almost any weapons. And shout out to Brock Purdy for being as good as he was on Sunday, just because like almost none of his main targets were there, and yet he still looked very, very productive. And I don't know if maybe that's a coaching thing or if that's a Brock Purdy thing, but the 49ers should be lucky right now that they got Brock Purdy on the roster and not some other quarterback woes. Yeah. Or like what the Dolphins are struggling with right now. They could be really in the crapper. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, listen, the Niners are in a better position. I'm going to try and look at it the positive here. Is the Niners are not in a position where it's doom and gloom. Mm-hmm. It's just now okay, if we don't have these guys, it can get ugly. And I'm not saying it's ugly, but you had a really good lead over the Rams, and then you let it go. So, was it the worst loss? No. But at the same time, it is one of those things that, listen, the Rams also were struggling with injuries to a lot of their major guys. Maybe not as many as the Niners, but it is a who's next, or can you handle injuries during the year type of a league. And the Rams proved that, hey, we can do it. We've done it. It seems like forever since Matthew Stafford has been there, except for the 1 year they won a Super Bowl. They surprisingly were all healthy. And with the 49ers, this is what everyone said. They said, okay, if McCaffrey isn't your running back, how do they look? Well, they still have Deebo Samuel. Okay, well, you don't have Deebo Samuel. How do you look? Okay, well, they have Kittle. Okay, you don't have Kittle. Who do you have? And now it's like, oh, crap, this is actually reality. And now it almost looks like Trent Williams may be hurt. So there's some issues that are going on in San Francisco. Is it detrimental? No. In the process of, do I think they could still get in the playoff? I do still think they're a good enough team to possibly get into the playoffs. But do I think they're going to a Super Bowl with the team they have now? Right now, it looks like a big fat no.
Yeah, I was saying earlier before the start of the regular season and even last week, every year they go through some sort of injury bug that stumps their potential. And I was saying, like, this could be a year where they miss the playoffs altogether just because of injuries. And it felt like, and you are very astute into calling this on a lot of the teams post Super Bowl, but Super Bowl hangover is a real deal. We have teams that don't recover well following a Super Bowl loss. And I feel like the 49ers are falling in line in that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 1-2 right now. And that's probably surprising. And I'm sure a lot of analysts or experts are still really high on the Niners, which you should be. I mean, they're a good team, but their record just doesn't show that. And they're not finishing games, unfortunately. And they're going through this injury bug. Who knows when Christian McCaffrey will come back, if he's going to come back this season? Because, I know that it's not a big deal, but he's going to Germany for stem cell treatment, and it's like a whole ordeal, and just to see how he's doing. So it's getting crazy for the Niners right now, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Just to kind of go off of that a little bit, I did want to put out that, listen, we're in week 3. So there's not room to like strictly just freak out, but at the same time, this division is not getting worse. It's getting better. The Seahawks look like a tough out. Do I think the Seahawks are a playoff team? I think that one's debatable. I really like the Arizona Cardinals right now, and I think that's a really scary team in that division. And the Rams are really beat up. Do I think they're going to be fantastic this year? No. But I think, again, they're not an easy out. It's you're not getting you're not getting where the Jets get the New England Patriots, or I want to say the Carolina Panthers, but after what they did to the Raiders, I don't want to say it right now. But I mean, in reality, the Panthers, I still don't think they're that good of a team yet. I think they had a good game. Got to see more consistency. So, this is an issue, and it really. I'm not even concerned about the Christian McCaffrey. It's like the other guys. If the other guys can come back, I think this is a good team. But the whole reason behind the idea behind the Super Bowl hangover is not just because, we know how to win, so we're good. Yes, that does come into play, like the mindset of it. But also what comes into play is that you don't have a traditional offseason like all the other teams. You basically go from the Super Bowl to maybe 2 weeks off, and then you're back at it. Whereas other teams are like, we're done in January, February. We've had 2 months. We've had all this time to recover. We get a little bit of time with our family. We get a little time to work on ourselves. And when you go to the Super Bowl, you go to the playoffs, and this is why it's so impressive that the Chiefs have just repeated. Not necessarily, and there's talks that they could three-peat, and again, we don't know how that's going to look, but that's why it's so impressive. And I think people forget that because they're like, oh, well, it's been, 6 months without football or whatever. And but football is a brutal sport.
Yeah.
That does so much to the body. I mean, if you haven't watched that show Receiver on Netflix, I encourage you to watch it, because it just goes to show you what they do each week to just be okay to play in that game. And that's why it's so important to have that off season. And if you don't have that off season, that's why it could end up being somewhat difficult to even make it back to a playoff game.
Yeah. All right, Drew. So there's 2 more that I had, but I'm just going to skip those 2. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. And I don't know if you've watched any of the Monday Night Football games tonight. I was specifically watching the Bengals and the Commanders, and probably as you're seeing right now, the Commanders beat the Bengals. And I think it was just the fact that the Commanders were able to do anything and everything that they wanted, run-wise, passing-wise. Jaden Daniels looked phenomenal tonight. Joe Burrow, though, the offense looked really good, but the defense couldn't stop anything. And so now the Bengals are 0-3. So, Drew, do you think the Bengals should be panicking a little bit, or what are you thinking, or what do you think the state of the Bengals are right now?
The Bengals should absolutely be panicking. Here's why. Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0. Cincinnati Bengals in the same division are 0-3. Okay. You have to face Pittsburgh twice. And it doesn't matter if Pittsburgh loses the rest of their all their other games except for against Cincinnati. Pittsburgh has a brutal defense. That defense is they are like sharks in water and there's blood in there. Like they are just in they are sensational. Like I don't know. There's not many adjectives to describe how good that Pittsburgh Steelers defense is. Every single year under Mike Tomlin, that defense is going to be ready and they are going to be absolute beasts.
Yeah.
And so your schedule is not getting any easier. Cleveland Browns, their offense may be bad. That defense is another defense that will kick your butt and they do not care.
Yep.
And then you have the Baltimore Ravens who are pissed right now because of the way they started. And then everyone's making speculation. Oh, Lamar Jackson hated John Harbaugh. And then there was a live video on Instagram where one of the players is going live in the private plane and Lamar Jackson looks like he's done with it. Well, because Lamar Jackson's pissed.
Yeah.
He wants to win. And he feels like the way they started is not good. And so he's coming out for blood as well. So, yes, the Bengals should absolutely be very, very nervous that this could get out of hand even more quickly. I think the Commanders are a good team. I think they have a very good defense. I think the offense is hit and miss with Washington, if I'm being completely honest. But the Bengals defense has been an issue since like last year. Last year, it was starting to sputter towards the end of the year. And then now Joe Burrow, he looked bad in week 1. And then he's been Joe Burrow the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But everyone else is kind of a no-show. I mean, it was good to see Jamar Chase finally show up. And, you know, T. Higgins really didn't have that great of a game in this game. But the other issue that I have is that Zach Moss did okay. Zach Moss is fine. But this is kind of what I was a little bit worried about when they let go of Joe Mixon, is the running game is not solid. Chase Brown is fine. Zach Moss is fine. I think if you throw Joe Mixon in there and you have a Chase Brown or a Zach Moss as the backup, then I think, okay, now I believe in this team. But the run game doesn't scare anyone. That offensive line is better than what it used to be, but it's not scary. And so if I'm Cincinnati, I'm absolutely panicking right now because to get bodied the way we did against the Commanders and Jaden Daniels going toe-to-toe against Joe Burrow shouldn't happen. Jaden Daniels is a good quarterback. He's a rookie. He shouldn't be going toe-to-toe with these guys. 3 total touchdowns for Jaden Daniels. That's a day.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm going to put an even further pin on that. In terms of passing, 21 of 23. He only had 2 completions the entire game. He had as many completions as touchdowns today. That's crazy.
QBR of 93. That's insane.
As a rookie. Now, granted, I'm going to make this claim right now. I think Jaden Daniels is the best rookie QB in his draft class. Clearly, he's the most ready. He's and to be truthful too, seeing him tonight going against Cincinnati, he was ready to go. He relished in the challenge. He didn't back down from it. It does help that he has Kingsbury, who's kind of, I don't want to say vanilla an NFL offense, but he's just translating it into like college language, I guess is the best way I can put it. So that way Jaden Daniels can accept it and then utilize it. It doesn't matter how that information is getting out, whether it's NFL terminology or college terminology. Jaden Daniels is throwing that ball on the field and Cincinnati Bengals couldn't stop it. I think if I'm Cincinnati, what I'm worried about is you probably had arguably your best offensive day in the last, I'd say 8 games, because they've also been a sputtering offense since last season. And this season now without a Joe Mixon, they probably had their best offensive game in terms of running, because in terms of rushing, they carried the ball 20 times as a team, rushed for 124 yards as a team with a touchdown. And Joe Burrow threw the ball 300 times, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That is almost as perfect as football as you can get in terms of the Bengals, and yet they lost.
Yeah.
That just says how bad their defensive is, and specifically their secondary. Their secondary could not hold these receivers at all. Granted, each team gave up about 2 sacks, but you can see Jaden Daniels with his mobility. He was able to flush the pocket out. He's able to make plays with his legs. Cincinnati just didn't have an answer for it. And when they were trying to claw their way back, they just couldn't hang. Their defense just let them down. And I think if I'm Cincinnati, the defense and that offensive line is the biggest thing that's going to stop you from achieving a wild card, a winning record, getting anywhere close to the Steelers in the AFC North, because 2 seasons ago, the Bengals were running in the North, and now they're dead last in the North. And that's saying a lot. And they're in the same division right now with the Browns. And the Browns aren't a bad team in general, but they're not having a great season. And if I'm the Bengals, I'm worried. We need to figure out what we're going to do with this defense. We need to figure out what we're doing in the secondary, because right now the Bengals aren't going anywhere much further than they're probably going to get a top 10 pick if they keep playing like this. So.
Yeah, a number that sticks out to me that I'm looking at, and I don't have the in-depth defensive numbers right now, but 4 quarterback hits all night for the Bengals defense. That shows you right there.
They're not even touching Daniels.
Yeah.
All right, Drew. So I'm going to play a little game with you called Hot or Not Head Coach Edition. So these are head coaches, hot or not. Head coaching edition. So these are head coaches that I'm throwing out there. You're going to tell me if they're on the hot seat or not. So let me know when you're ready.
I am ready.
All right. First one, we're leading off with a hot one. Mike McCarthy of the Dallas Cowboys.
I think he's on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Honestly, just based on the facial expression of Jerry Jones after the game yesterday, he was just like, oh, God, not this again. So I do think he is on the hot seat. Yeah, it's just, listen, the offense has been okay. But ever since what's his face on defense left? Quinn. Why can't I think of his name? Dan Quinn. Ever since he left Dallas, that defense has gotten worse and worse. And Michael Parsons is regressing. And you can blame that on the defense coordinator, absolutely. But listen, the guy who hired him was Mike McCarthy. He's the one who said, "Okay, we're gonna go with him," and he's gotten a lot of money. He's gotten Dak Prescott paid. He's got CeeDee Lamb paid, and they're 1-2 still. So, there's not much to say other than I believe he's on the hot seat because he's tied with the New York Giants for last place in the NFC East.
Yeah,
tied with the New York Giants for last place right now. Of course, it's only 3 games. I understand that. But I think Mike McCarthy has more than had multiple chances, and it has not gotten any better.
Yeah, I'm going to say Mike McCarthy I agree, he's on the hot seat. But I think it's Jerry Jones' fault that he's on the hot seat because of not paying CeeDee Lamb when he should have, not paying Dak Prescott until literally the 11th hour. Now you got to figure out what you're going to do with Micah Parsons. I will say, though, in their secondary, they don't have Ron DeBlanc. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's from Fresno State. They don't have him in the secondary. Yeah, they don't have him in the secondary anymore, who led them in interceptions last year. So I think that might have a play in there. But Dan Quinn is sorely missed in this team. But I don't feel bad for the Cowboys. If anything, this is kind of nice to see that they're struggling, because there's nothing worse that I want to hear from as a Cowboys fan that's gloating about beating some team in the NFC. But anyways,
a lot of my coworkers are Cowboys fans, so I'm happy.
But I do think that Jerry Jones actually is to blame for Mike McCarthy's struggles, just because I think it's Jerry Jones that's shooting himself in the foot. He had a comment about why they couldn't sign Derrick Henry because they couldn't afford him. And I thought it was just poetry that Derrick Henry ran for like 152 yards, 2 touchdowns on the Cowboys. It was so fitting, like, afford this. And Derrick Henry just absolutely owned them. And I know that the score looked a lot closer than what it really was, but don't let it fool you. It was a beatdown at home in Jerry's World 2 consecutive weeks. So unfortunately, Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat. I agree. I think he'll make it through the end of the season, though. I'd be surprised if he's fired at any point this season. He's definitely going to finish the season. I think he's earned that. But yeah,
unless they have a just an absolute meltdown, like they just start losing every game. But I don't think the Cowboys are in a bad situation where they're going to do that. So I don't think they're that bad.
They were actually kind of. Well, here's what I'm worried about offensively is when they were coming back, CeeDee Lamb wasn't really involved in the offense very much. And I don't know if that's just maybe the play calling or how it all worked out. But I think the offense, once they kind of get all the new pieces kind of working together in terms of like the other receivers working alongside with CeeDee Lamb, maybe then the game plan changes a little bit. Also, it doesn't help that they don't have a run game at all. You want to talk about a one-dimensional team, that's the Cowboys. They don't have a run game at all, just like the Raiders don't really have a run game as well. But, you know, that once you turn a team into a passing team, you take away their best weapon. It's not hard to beat them. So
1,000% agreed.
All right. Next coach on the hot seat. He actually coached in one of the doubleheader Monday Night Football games. Doug Pederson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is he hot on the hot seat or not?
I think I'm going to surprise you with this one, but I'm going to actually say not. I don't think he's on the hot seat. And the reason I say that is simply this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think his play calling is necessarily the issue. What I think the issue is people still believe that Trevor Lawrence might be the Lord and Savior of Jacksonville Jaguars, but I think he's slowly proving that he's not. I think Trevor Lawrence has had every single opportunity to get better and better, and he looks the same as he did his second year. Mm-hmm. And his second year, he was fantastic, but defenses, this is a quote that I say all the time, defenses get 1 year to figure you out, and they will. And they figured him out, and he hasn't adjusted to it. He looks like he's doing the same crap over and over that he's always done. And yeah, it was great year 2 when you finally got Doug Pederson. Or yeah, year 2. I'm right. But now you have to get better and better. You have to adjust. And he has not adjusted. And so that's kind of why I honestly do say that he's not on the hot seat, even though he probably is. I'm sure he is. But I actually don't put this on Doug Pederson. He inherited Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence isn't getting any better. And you can make the argument, hey, that's the coach. The coach has to coach him up. He's got to get him better. But at the same time, as a person, you have to go out and better yourself as well. You know, as much as we make fun of Russell Wilson, he does that. He does it on himself. I mean, he posts it all the time. I'm not saying you have to post it, but at least show that you're getting better, and he's not getting better at all. And so I actually put more of the blame on Trevor Lawrence. So I'm going to say not, but I mean, he probably is.
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, Doug Pederson does no wrong because he is a good head coach. And, you know, he did lead the Philadephia Eagles to a Super Bowl not very long ago.
Cody.
He did. I mean, he can definitely coach in the NFL. But here's what I will say. Look, this is what their second or third season Doug Pederson has had Trevor Lawrence now. And the fact that Trevor Lawrence is regressing, yeah, sure, that's partially on the player. But I do think that does fall some responsibility on the coaching to like, okay, he's not getting any better. And maybe Trevor Lawrence is just a bust. And, you know, that's all there is to it. There's nothing we can do to make him any better. And if that's the case, that's exactly why that they have Mac Jones you know, as a backup, just in case they need to plug in another quarterback who maybe gives them a better chance. I think I would be surprised if Doug Pederson finishes this season with the Jaguars. I know I said Mike McCarthy's probably safe for the rest of the season. I don't feel the same way with Doug Pederson. I feel like by week 12, if they are like 1-11, 3-10, he's gonna be gone. And the reason why is because the Jaguars owner has already said that this is the best Jaguars team supposedly ever assembled. And yet this is the worst Jaguars team we've seen under Doug Pederson. They have no offensive life. They only put up 10. Now, granted, I will say they went against the Buffalo Bills in a rainy Buffalo evening. It was a rough game. However, Buffalo put 47 on them, and they only scored 10 points. I don't know how we can argue saying that that's not Doug Pederson's fault. I get it. Like, he can't play on the field, but man, he is the head coach, and it all kind of falls on his shoulders, and it sucks, but that is what it is. And also, too, they blew a lead against the Miami Dolphins, and that's also why they're 0-3. So I get it. Like, he doesn't deserve the blame, but that's the, heavy as those that wear the crown, he's got to be responsible for it. And this team just doesn't look better. And truthfully too, this team probably needs a new regime to begin with. Maybe if Trevor Lawrence isn't the Lord and Savior that they all thought he was, like you said, then they need to look to trade him or look at the draft or something, because I agree. Like, the next conversation we should be having is Trevor Lawrence a bust or not, because I don't think he's worth the contract extension that he got. I think he's kind of overrated, if I'm being honest. Like, I hear all this about his arm, and yet he doesn't get his team any further than a wild card. Yep. And granted, sure, when they played the Chargers, they came back 27-0 on them, and they had that one lonely wild card. But since then, they haven't even come close to the playoffs or a wild card. So, and they've underperformed each of the last however many games. So, unfortunately, Doug Pederson's on the hot seat. I'd say that.
Yeah. I honestly, as you were talking and you were saying, like, you only scored 10 points. I looked at the score. This is the first time I looked at the actual score. I didn't realize they kicked him, beat him by 37. That's why I started laughing. Oh, shoot. I didn't realize that. My bad. Sorry, I just thought that was a fun fact. I literally didn't even check it. And oh, shoot.
They only scored 10 points. You're kidding, right?
Yeah,
all right. So the next one. No, this one's probably my favorite one out of the ones I've picked, and it's because it's about Robert Saleh. And I love his relationship with Aaron Rodgers. It's so toxic. I can't help it. But is Robert Saleh on the hot seat or not, Drew?
I think he absolutely is. I mean, it's sad to say because they just ended up winning. But I got to be honest, he's made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. He hasn't made any right decision, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I think the best decision he made was to get Nathaniel Hackett to the Jets, to get Brett Favre. Oh my God, Aaron Rodgers.
Another toxic player, but that's okay.
Yeah. To get Aaron Rodgers, and I think they wanted to get Aaron, obviously. Yeah. But the position that they put him in was all kinds of wrong. Didn't deserve it at all, and that offense doesn't look great. Like, yeah, if Aaron Rodgers, what did Aaron Rodgers end up throwing? I think it was over 260 passing yards.
Yeah.
280 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. And then that opens up the run game. Breece Hall only had 54 rushing yards. He did have that touchdown. So, fantasy, that means he was phenomenal. But in real football, it's not fantastic. It's 50 yards. I mean, maybe credit to the Patriots defense, I guess. But, nothing really stands out on this offense. Nothing really is sensational. It helps you have a Garrett Wilson. It helps that Alan Lazard has that connection. I mean, God, to be perfectly honest, if Alan Lazard is not on the Jets and doesn't have that connection with Aaron Rodgers, I honestly, this might sound crazy, but I don't know where this team would be at if it wasn't for Alan Lazard. I'm being dead serious. It's just the connection that he has with Aaron Rodgers is really a big reason why the Jets end up getting successful on defense, because everything else, I mean, defense on offense, because everything else, it hasn't been great. I mean, the Jets defense has been good. I don't think it's been as solid as maybe what we thought it would be, but man, oh man, and then just the look that Aaron Rodgers gave Robert Saleh after was just wild. It was just,
Yeah.
He was like, "Hey, way to go, man!" And Aaron's like, "Get the hell off of me!"
Yeah.
Like, we're not cool, bro. That's exactly what it was. And I say that to the kids all the time when I'm mad at them, when they're not listening to me, and then they try and tap me up. "Oh, what's up, man?" I'm like, "No, get off of me. We're not cool right now."
Yeah.
So that's exactly what Aaron Rodgers did to Robert Saleh.
So I've been tongue in cheeking this most of the evening when that we've been talking about it, but I can't get enough of Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers' relationship, because it is not relationship goals. They could not hate each other anymore. And I've seen the video of Robert Saleh trying to like give him like a semi hug or whatever from a score. Aaron Rodgers basically puts his hands on his chest and basically, some say he said, we're up by 2 scores, or, it's early, or whatever the case may be, like almost like don't touch me kind of a look is what it seemed like. But maybe if like Aaron Rodgers had laughed it off, it'd be different. But the fact that he stared at Robert Saleh like he was like, "Dude, what are you doing? Don't touch me." Like, you could just see this tension between them. And then also, too, during the offseason when there was mandatory OTAs and Aaron Rodgers had an unexcused absence and then said, "No, I did excuse it." And then Robert Saleh basically was throwing him under the bus regarding that. And then they, through the media, have been throwing these weird jabs at each other. And this is where, like, for Robert Saleh, I feel the same way as you do for Doug Pederson. I feel bad because I don't feel like it's 100% his fault. But unfortunately, like, yeah, he has not made the greatest decision. But what's tough is when you have a personality like Aaron Rodgers on your team who's clearly taking over the team and not a good way, and you're trying everything you can to show like, "No, this is my team. I'm the head coach and the leader of the team." And it's almost like what you do despite that person that's taking the mantle, so to speak, without your permission. It's also costing you like games. It's costing you decisions, player rotations, like whatever the case is. And it's unfortunate. Like, I feel like Robert Saleh is a better coach than he gets credit for, but it doesn't help that like the evidence just isn't there. Like, the win-loss total since his tenure there hasn't been great. Having the relationship he has with Aaron Rodgers, like, I will be surprised if Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers don't have some sort of public fight again in the media for the rest of the season. I feel like they're a ticking time bomb. Neither one of them like each other very much. Robert Saleh reminds me of somebody that if you're a diva or prima donna, he will call you out. And I feel like that Aaron Rodgers doesn't like somebody that challenges his ego. And I feel like they are just like water and oil. They do not mix. They're just an explosion waiting to happen. And I'm here for it. I find it very entertaining. But yeah, Robert Saleh, in my opinion, if they don't win the Super Bowl, he's not coming back as a head coach. They can get all the way to the playoffs, and I think they're going to let him go. That's how much I think like Robert Saleh is already out the door. So,
one thing it does remind me of is like when your parents are telling you and your sibling, like, if you guys behave the whole day, we'll go eat, X place.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can't stand each other and you guys are hating each other. And as soon as mom looks away or dad looks away, you guys are like hitting each other. And as soon as they look back, you guys are like, "Oh yeah, we're good. Everything's good. Oh, I love him. Oh yeah." Trying to act like that's what it seems like right now. That combination is just like, it's so awkward and it. And they're just acting like they're hiding it well, but everyone knows. Like, the parents aren't dumb, but they're just like, whatever. Like,
and they're gaslighting you to like make you believe that like you're crazy for seeing like, "No, I can clearly see you guys absolutely hate each other. Like, clearly."
No.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. So this one, I think I'm throwing it out there just to see like where you feel like the barometer is on this team. But Philadelphia Eagles have been an interesting team, I think, all season. So I'm curious, do you think Nick Sirianni is on the hot seat or not?
I think he is, because, oh man, this is hard because I mean, the fourth quarter was great for the Eagles. The whole game was not great for the Eagles. I mean, you could say that about the Saints too, but I don't know. Like they're just not who they were a couple of years ago. You know, even though yes, Jalen Hurts threw for 311 yards, which is great. But for me, it was kind of more like it doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
As it used to. It looks different. I don't know how to pinpoint it. And I got to be honest, Saquon Barkley is the savior right now for this team. He's the one who's, I think, keeping this team alive because, yeah, Dallas Goedert had a phenomenal day. I'm not, saying anything about his day, but, he hasn't been consistent throughout this year so far. That was like his first really good day. Whereas Saquon Barkley, 17 carries, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's what it seems like it's been every single game so far. So, Saquon, without him, I mean, you're going to see more of what the Eagles did last year. So if Saquon doesn't have a good day, I don't think the Eagles are all that good. However, I will say, I think this team is too talented to keep losing or to lose weird games. I think they're going to lose some games they probably should win, but the losing streak last year that they ended up having, and then this year, kind of the way they've come out flat, and I think they've benefited from a couple of things. I mean, I think the Saints finally kind of cooled off, which was great for Philadelphia, but for all intents and purposes, New Orleans had a chance to win this game, and luckily the Eagles ended up pulling out. But again, Saquon Barkley. If it's not for Saquon, they don't win that game. So I think he's on the hot seat. To be perfectly honest, he's probably not as hot of a seat as I think he is. But if I were the owner or the GM, I would really think about, okay, who's going to be our next head coach?
Yeah. I think this one's interesting because I feel the same. Like, I think he's on the hot seat, but I wouldn't put him on the same. I wouldn't make his seat as hot as, let's say, Doug Pederson. I don't think he's at risk of losing his job in the middle of the season or before the season ends. But if the Eagles underperform this season, I think the expectations are at least the divisional round of the playoffs or the NFC Championship. I think is obviously their expectations of where they think they can go in the NFC, I think. And I truly believe when the Eagles are healthy, their roster warrants that type of talent to where if they take care of business and play up to their expectations, they should be, an NFC Championship type of team. But I think what makes this tough, and I think to your point about why this team seems different than when they were on their Super Bowl run, is because I feel like the Nick Sirianni camaraderie is fading, and now this team is listening, but they haven't mutinied yet against the coach. We're almost in that transition of when the coach still has enough of a voice to get his players to play, but each week it's dwindling as decisions are made. For example, not going for a field goal when points are at a premium in this kind of game, and you keep going for it on fourth down. And at least against the Saints were stopping you on fourth down. And so you essentially leave 12 points of just field goal points on the field just because you wouldn't just play it smart by kicking the field goal, taking the points as they come, because you're not scoring touchdowns at the same volume as you were against the Packers or whatever else the team is. And so I feel like Nick Sirianni still somewhat has a little bit of control in that locker room, but I think at any given point, with just a little bit of adversity, it's going to take the losing streak to essentially get everyone to start pointing fingers at one another. And it doesn't help that last season there was a report coming out that Nick Sirianni didn't have control of Jalen Hurts, play calling, and a lot of the players were kind of doing their own thing against what Sirianni was demanding. And it just kind of goes to show the lack of respect that they had for Sirianni last season. And again, I feel like we're kind of transitioning with Sirianni to he's still the head coach and they respect him, but each week we're getting to the point where they're tuning him out, and now it's on the verge of he's going to lose the locker room pretty soon is what it feels like. And so I definitely think he's on the hot seat to the degree it's probably a little cooler than, like I mentioned, Doug Pederson. But I feel like Sirianni, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a change just because we need a different voice in that locker room. It's not, his voice isn't being listened to anymore. And, maybe just the peak of what Sirianni can do is losing in the Super Bowl, and that's the best you're going to get out of him. So, but that's what I would say for that. All right. This one I think is pretty easy. I think we both can agree on this one. Matt Eberflus, is he on the hot seat or not?
Matt Eberflus is on the hot seat. The defense isn't as good. I mean, even though they did pretty well against the Colts, but again, Anthony Richardson was, I don't know what's going on with him. He looked phenomenal last year. This year, he looks awful. He's regressed. And, Jonathan Taylor, good Lord. I mean, he had a day. But Caleb Williams, now he's gone through two quarterbacks. Justin Fields didn't look good, and now Caleb Williams doesn't look good. And now you look at where Justin Fields is this year, 3-0 with the Steelers, and he looks pretty darn good. So, obviously now there's a reference of, okay, you might be the problem there, buddy. And I think Matt Eberflus, unfortunately, with all the talent that they have, this is the issue that you run into. When you accumulate all this talent, you get Caleb Williams, you get DeAndre Swift, you get Rome Odunze, you get Cole Kmet, you get DJ Moore. You get all these guys. I know I'm missing one receiver that I can't think of. Oh, Keenan Allen. You get all these guys, and it's an 1-2 start. Not great.
Did you know Anthony Richardson played in his 7th game on Sunday in his NFL career? And he's been in the league now. This is 3rd year.
This is his 2nd year, no?
2nd year, sorry. 7th game in his 2nd year. Isn't that crazy?
I did know that.
I'm saying Matt Eberflus.
I had him in fantasy last year. That's why I know that.
Yeah. I think Matt Eberflus, he's on his way out. I think Ben Johnson of the Detroit Lions is gonna be the head coach of the Bears next season, just because he's offensive minded. He's resurrected the offense in Detroit. I think Ben Johnson is going to be in a bidding war with several teams that are going to want his services. I think the Bears are going to pay the most because they have Caleb Williams and a bunch of young pieces that I think Ben Johnson's going to like. But this Bears head coach currently, Eberflus, he's out of there. He'll be done by the end of the season, bearing them winning the Super Bowl, which they're not going to.
That'd be amazing if they did.
That would be, I would almost say, then the NFL's rigged. There's absolutely no way on God's green earth that the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl. As much as I've made a very bold prediction about Caleb Williams being a potential MVP candidate, there's absolutely no way I would bet any sum of money on them winning the Super Bowl, because it's just money you're going to burn because you're not getting it back. So
fair enough.
All right, last one, and this is just because of, again, earlier. Well, actually, I got two more, but the one of them is more or less of like, how do you feel about it? But Zach Taylor of the Bengals, is he on the hot seat or not?
I think he's absolutely on the hot seat. I think, unfortunately, he's kind of run his course there. The team's not getting better. The offensive line isn't getting better. Look, Joe Burrow is phenomenal. He's keeping that team afloat. I mean, if I'm the Raiders, maybe.
Hey.
I mean, maybe throw Devontae Adams at him. They have Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, and then you can go draft a quarterback, because right now you're 0-3. You're going to have a high draft pick.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, you're going to have to throw a few other picks in there. I know the Raiders are going to have to, but listen, I know the Bengals are not going to. That's more tongue-in-cheek. But in the reality of the situation, Joe Burrow is phenomenal. Jamar Chase is phenomenal. T. Higgins is a really good receiver. The offensive line is not good. The running game, I'm not sold on. Maybe other guys are, but I don't like their running duo. I don't think it's NFL caliber, in my opinion. And then that defense has gotten worse and worse each and every year for some strange reason. It was like at the tip top of its performance when it hit the Super Bowl, and ever since then, that defense has gotten worse and worse. So it's just unfortunate. I wish the Bengals were better because I really liked watching the Bengals play when they're good. But for some reason, that offense is just like sputtering, and then all of a sudden is phenomenal. But that defense is terrible, and the team is not playing like a team right now.
Yeah, I agree. We're in lockstep with that one. I think Zach Taylor's for sure on the hot seat. You know, could unfortunately be a coach let go, and you know, who would make an offensive coordinator for another team next season, probably, if I had to predict that. So,
yeah, I think I agree with that.
All right, last one. This one is just more, I think I kind of know your answer, but I'm just curious just because of all that's happened in the last few seasons. But Mike McDaniels, do you think he's on the hot seat?
I don't believe Mike McDaniel is on the hot seat. Obviously with Tua, yes, that's where you can kind of give him grace. But if you look at the whole, that offense is just a machine. I mean, I know Skylar Thompson wasn't great, and then he did end up getting hurt. He was sacked 5 times. So, you know, say what you will. But 13-19, 107 yards, they were getting him in a groove. They were getting him into the flow of the game. And even Tim Boyle, I mean, you look at that towards the end. I mean, he also 7-13, very efficient, 79 yards. I mean, that's good. And so Mike McDaniel knows how to get the best out of his quarterbacks. And let us not forget how Tua looked with Brian Flores as the head coach. And now the way he's been looking like with Mike McDaniel. It is a complete 180. Okay. Brian Flores is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. He had no business touching that offense whatsoever. Mike McDaniel is a phenomenal offensive coordinator, or I would even say head coach. Guys love that guy. I mean, that team loves that guy. I think he's a really good head coach. He needs help defensively, and I think he does have that. And then obviously you have Tyreek Hill, that helps. Jalen Waddle, that helps. Devon Achane. Okay, that helps too. And you know, they have a lot of things, a lot of guys to work with. But overall, I think Mike McDaniel is not on the hot seat. And I know you know this. We can't put the blame on him for the whole Tua situation. And they're just going to have to really invest into another quarterback. If Tua does come back, they're at least going to have to invest into a really good backup because we've seen this time and time again with the Miami Dolphins. It seems like every single year we see this with the Dolphins where Tua gets hurt. Now what? And it's Skylar Thompson is the answer. No, I think we need to go after someone else.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's necessarily on the hot seat. I think, I think some of the decisions he's made, I would even say going back to last season, I think you'd have to question a little bit to still have a Skylar Thompson on the team, considering like maybe he's good enough to be on a roster, but as your primary backup quarterback, I think is questionable. And with how explosive the players that you have can be, to not have an above average like backup quarterback to at least supplement that, I think is what makes it difficult. And then, the underachieving, I think the last few seasons is something I would kind of call into question, because like you would expect like the Dolphins, with how high powered their offense is, to be a lot better. And yet like against, respectable defenses, I don't even think against like lockdown defenses, I think just middle of the pack, respectable defenses, that offense just doesn't look the same. And that's what it looked like last year. This year, they're the only team that has not held a lead at all in the 3 games that they've played. And I don't even think they've scored 30 points yet in the entirety of the season. So, and granted, it's only 3 weeks. I know it's a little hyperbolic, but still, I think it does not help the argument as to why he's not on the hot seat. Because, I mean, a lot of teams are going through injuries or going through whatever. And, some good ones are finding a way to come through and then some aren't. And unfortunately, the ones that don't come through are the ones that are usually like aren't the most sound or astute coaches. And they're the ones that usually go first. And, you know, I agree. I think Mike McDaniels has done a great job in Miami, making that team explosive and dangerous. But outside of that, I mean, once you took away Tua, and I don't want to say that, you know, Tua is this almighty quarterback. I mean, I think what makes it work is this offense is tailored towards his skill set. Yes. And now you don't have a quarterback that could at least, you know, manage the system. I think you're seeing the wheels coming off. And I think that's what's unfortunate is it's not like you're scoring 25 points as opposed to 35 points. You're scoring maybe 10 points if you're lucky, as opposed to like what you were doing last season, which I think you were averaging like 30 something points. So it's just a huge drop off and it's a huge change. And I think that's what's the more alarming part. Do I think his job is safe ultimately? Yeah, I think he's set. I think he's going to have a bad season and be forgiven, and that's it. But, you know, I just, for the sake of discussion, like 2 mid seasons, and then now you have like kind of a bad start to your, I think this is what his 3rd or 4th season with the Dolphins, I think 3rd season. And so just curious, like, you know, if it keeps getting worse, like, is there additional opportunities for him? So, yeah. Okay, Drew. So, do you have time to do the over-unders?
Yeah, let's make it a little quick, though.
Okay.
We can do all the games. We'll just do a little brief, like, you know, this is why I pick it. There you go. No tongue-in-cheek.
All right, let me know when you can see it.
So you're using the ESPN bet as well. Oh, no, you're just using ESPN.
I'm just using ESPN for the lines. There we go. We're on week 4 now. Oh, it's getting there.
It's getting there.
All right. Do you see it loaded yet?
Yeah, I have them up here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, they're all the same. All right. I just want to make sure.
All right. So let's just go through the line real quick. So just go down what you're reading. I'll follow along, and then I'll tell you if I agree with that or not.
Okay. So we're going with Dallas and New York first.
Yep.
Okay, so Dallas is favored by 4.5. I would actually bet the Giants to cover. Mm-hmm. I would bet the 4.5 with the Giants. When you talk about NFL and it's over 3.5, that's where I make it. It gets me a little worried. The Giants and Cowboys, no matter how good or bad they are, they always play very well against each other, and it is in New York. And I feel like Dallas in an outside stadium doesn't do as well as they do at home. So I would take New York in that one.
To outright win?
Not to outright win. No, just to cover.
Got it. Are you taking the over or the under on the total points?
Oh God.
It's at 44.5.
I would have to go over. I would go over.
Yeah, so I'd go over on the points, and then I'd have the Giants to cover, but Dallas to win.
Okay. All right. So next one you have on your list, it's New Orleans and Atlanta. So let me get there. Okay, New Orleans, Atlanta. In Atlanta, Atlanta's favored by 2. Yeah, I'd have to go with I would take the Falcons to outright win. Yeah, I don't listen, after the performance that New Orleans had, they kind of got humbled a little bit, and Atlanta has been playing really well. They played really well against Kansas City. So I'd have to take the Falcons and the points there.
So you're having the Falcons win and you're taking the points, is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are the Saints going to cover or is Atlanta
No, they're
going
not going to cover.
the...
No, I'm going Atlanta in the 2.5. So I have them winning by more than 3.
All right.
I would also say over on the points on that one as well.
I'd go over on the points, but I would say Saints to outright win. I feel like the Saints are going to come back in a dome. I know it's division, but I just have a feeling that the Saints are going to I don't know. I think they're going to want revenge after the Eagle performance. So,
all right. Next game we have the Rams and Bears. Bears are favored at 3. Okay. I would have to go first. The total points, I would go under on this game. I think in Chicago, it's gonna be a lot of running game. I don't like the Bears running game. I like the Rams running game. But I mean, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of points scored here. I think the Bears are gonna be able to kind of shut down the Rams receivers quite a bit here. So I would go the under there. I would take the Rams to cover and outright win. Right now, what I see with the Chicago Bears, even though they're home and the Rams are kind of depleted, I feel like Matthew Stafford's going to find a way to win. And as much as I'm going to be rooting for the Bears because I really want Caleb Williams to be successful, I just don't see how.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Rams outright win as well, but I would actually go over on the points. I think the Bears are going to get into a shootout with the Rams, and you'd be surprised on how easy 40 points is to come by if both teams are scoring fairly regularly throughout the game. So I'd go over for the points just because I don't see it being like a defensive struggling game because the Rams and the Bears have okay defenses, but I think their offenses are going to put on a little bit of a show. But I would say Rams outright win, and I'd go over on the points.
All right, so we have Vikings and the Packers. Packers are favored at 2.5 in Green Bay. I would say the Vikings are going to cover, and I'd actually pick them to outright win. As much as the Packers have actually been pretty impressive, and the Vikings have been just absolutely dominating teams, and typically teams kind of go back on that. I'm not impressed with Willis as much as a lot of other guys are. And I think that Vikings defense is that much more impressive than what Willis has been anyway. I think that Vikings defense is really going to suffocate him. And so I'm actually going to take the Vikings in this to outright win. And I would take the over in the points at 43.5 just because I think Sam Darnold, the way he's been throwing, I don't know how the Packers are going to slow him down. I think the Packers have a good defense. I don't think they have a great defense, so I don't think they have a way to slow him down unless, Darnold is throwing just absolute, crap out there.
Yeah. So this is tough because I don't think that Malik Willis is playing as bad as what people think. I think he's doing pretty well. He's very efficient, and I think credit Matt LaFleur for the game planning that he's done. And I will say, though, it does help when you go against the Titans, so that will make you look good from time to time. But Packers might actually get Jordan Love back this week. I think there's reports that he might actually come back on this week, but I'd agree with you. I think the Vikings defense is very stout. They made CJ Stroud look very pedestrian. Brock Purdy had a hard time with their scheme. So I would actually go under on the points because I think the Vikings are going to have another high scoring game, but not give up a lot of points to Green Bay. So I think I'm going to go under on the points, and I'd have the Vikings to outright win as well. Because, man, this Minnesota team, they might be, I don't want to say it to jinx them, but I think they're in the running of one of the top teams in the NFC and like a legitimate contender because Brian Flores has his defense looking extremely scary. And I know that Green Bay is a good young team, but I just feel like the Vikings defense is a problem, and it's gonna be really hard to stop them.
All right, so the next game we have Pittsburgh and Indianapolis in Indianapolis. Pittsburgh is favored at 2. I was going to say 2.5. And the under over is at 40.5. So I first am actually going to go with the over on the 40.5. It's in a dome, and the way that Justin Fields has been playing, I think he's going to do well. I think Anthony Richardson might struggle, but I actually think he might have a better day than what you think. And I think Jonathan Taylor finally found his confidence. And even though, again, I really like the Steeler defense, I think they're a better pass rushing team than a run stopping team. So I think Jonathan Taylor is going to find some success. And I think they're going to have to simplify it a little bit for Anthony Richardson. But in the end, I think the Steelers are going to win and not cover. I think they're just going to absolutely win. I would take the Steelers and the points there.
Got it. I would take the Steelers line, but I would go under on the points. I think the Steelers defense is going to shut down the Colts, and not because I don't think that they're a talented offense. I just think Pittsburgh is probably top 3 defense in the NFL. It's hard to say if they're 2 or 3. I think they're number 1 with how that pass rush is and that secondary. They're locking down players. Anthony Richardson, in my opinion, I think this is a bad defense for him to go up against to find his confidence. I understand that Jonathan Taylor found some confidence in running the ball against the Bears, but Steelers, I think, are going to absolutely take that away, and they're going to challenge Anthony Richardson. And I just don't think Anthony Richardson is accurate enough to beat the Steelers. So I would go over on the overall. I would go over on the overall points, but I would take the line for Pittsburgh.
All right, so we agree on that. So next game is Denver against New York against the Jets. The line is favored for the Jets at 7. That's a crazy number. And the under-over totals is 38.5. So I'm taking the over on the overall total points. Mm-hmm. And I picked the Broncos. I'm at least going to pick them to cover. But I actually think they're going to win this game. I actually really like Denver. I thought Bo Nix really showed a lot in the last game. Mm-hmm. Is he going to make mistakes? Yes, but I wasn't all that impressed with the Jets. Like the Patriots, it was 24-3, and it seemed like doom and gloom. But for all intents and purposes, you add a touchdown to the Patriots, and they're in the game. So to me, I think Denver is a much better team, and I think Bo Nix, the way he looked last week, and when you talk about a number in the NFL, when we're talking about picks, that's a big number, 7. Yeah. And so if I see a number like 5 or higher, I'm always betting the team who's the underdog, because it rarely happens that a team gets beat like that against the spread.
Yeah. I would agree. I'm going to go over on the overall points at that 38.5 mark. I think I would pick Denver to cover, but I think the Jets will pull it out. But it's hard for me to say that the Broncos are going to lose by 7 or more. I think Patrick Surtain is going to take away Aaron Rodgers' number 1 receiver. I think Denver's defense is a little underrated, and I get it. This is in New York. I agree, though. That line's a little too high. In fact, I almost want to say the Broncos are probably going to outright win, but I think the Jets will pull it out. But I think Denver's going to cover. That line seems like a trap.
All right, so the next game we have are the Eagles and the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. The line is favored for the Eagles at 2.5, and the under-over totals is 44.5. So I'm going to go with total points over at 44.5. And I'm not going to lie to you, I love the Buccaneers here. The Buccaneers got absolutely shellacked in their last game. And the Eagles are going into Tampa. So I love a team that absolutely gets hammered, and they come back next week and they just absolutely put it on. So I'm betting the over in the points, and I'm actually taking the Buccaneers to outright win over the Eagles.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I'm going over on the points, and then I would take the Buccaneers to outright win. I feel like the Buccaneers are going to, I guess it would be an upset in some consideration, but truthfully, I think with the Eagles not having Devontae Smith, potentially also not having A.J. Brown, only having Saquon Barkley, I don't know if that's enough to beat the Buccaneers. This is also in Tampa. Tampa is very good at home. So I'd go the points, and I would take Tampa to outright win.
Okay, next game we have the Bengals against the Panthers in Carolina. The line is Bengals favored at 4.5. Under and over is 47.5. So here in this game, I'm actually going to go with the total points as under. And the reason is both teams put up a lot of points in this past week here. So I think they're going to kind of take a step back from each other a little bit. I think Andy Dalton's going to kind of become a little more human now. But I'm not all impressed with the Bengals defense. So I do think they'll find some success, but I don't think the Panthers. I think the Panthers really showed some defensive swagger against the Raiders. So I do think that Joe Burrow might not throw for over 300 yards, but I do think he's going to find success. I am actually going to pick the Panthers to cover because I think Andy Dalton, like I said, is going to find some success, but I do think the Bengals will win. And like I said, I take the under on the total points.
Okay, so I'm going to take the over on the total points. I think this is it's going to be an offensive battle because Cincinnati, we've already talked about it. They don't really have a defense. Carolina, I think their defense played okay against the Raiders, but I think that's just more that the Raiders just didn't have a very good game plan, and that offense just didn't have great play calling. I don't think that was more or less the Panthers shutting down the Raiders. But I'm going to be bold here, and I'm going to take the Panthers to win outright. This is in Carolina. Andy Dalton against Cincinnati, his former team. I think he's going to carry that momentum that he took from the Raiders and getting their first win. They're going to go back to Carolina, and I think they're going to get their second victory, and it'll be on Cincinnati. So I actually have Carolina to outright win for that game.
Okay, the next game we have the Jaguars and the Texans in Houston. The Texans are favored at 6, and the under-over total of 45.5. So first, I'm going to pick the over. I do think that this is going to be somewhat of an offensive game, and like I said, the number 6, I'm kind of leaning more towards taking the Texans to actually, win by 7 or more. I really do want to put that, but that number in the NFL is just too big for me, even though it is in Houston. But you know what? I talked myself into it. I'm actually going to take the 6, even though I literally just said if I don't. But here's the reason. Jacksonville, no, you know what? No. I'm taking Jacksonville to cover. I'm going to take them to cover because after they only scored 10 against Buffalo, which is fucking wild, and Houston really did not have a good offensive performance. I'm going to take the over in the points, and I'm going to take Jacksonville to cover. I think this will be actually somewhat of a very close game, but I do think Houston will win this game.
Okay, so I'm going to go over on the points as well. Actually, no. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to go under on the points because I think Jacksonville is going to have another horrible offensive game. They're in Houston. Houston is a top 5 defense. I'm going under on the points because I think Houston's going to score the majority of the points, and I would take Houston at the points. In fact, if there was a chance, I'd go over on their points as well. I think they're going to beat Jacksonville pretty handily. I know it's the NFL. You want to be, if the line is, whatever, you're 5 or more, like it makes you a little weary. I think this is all set up for Houston to just run Jacksonville out of Texas. And the fact that Houston is coming off of a blowout loss to the Vikings, I think Houston is going to want to prove a point. And unfortunately, Jacksonville's next on the schedule. So I would go under on the point total, and I would take Houston at the line. And if I would actually go more if that was the case. So.
All right, next game we have the Commanders against the Cardinals in Arizona. Arizona is favored at 3.5, and the under/over totals is at 50.5.
Oh, no defense on this game.
Yeah, I'd actually take the over in this one. I like both offenses that much. It's not even necessarily about the defenses, even though I do think Commanders have somewhat of a good defense, but I would take the over in that just because of how good. And I'm actually going to shock you here. I'm going to take the Cardinals to outright win the 3.5. So I think they're going to win by at least 4 or more. Okay. And that being because the way I've been watching Arizona Cardinals, they're fun to watch. And I think the Commanders, after coming off a big win, it's going to be tough for them to win in Arizona against a Kyler Murray type team.
Yeah, I would agree the same. I'd take the over on the points, and I would take over on the Arizona line as well.
All right, next game, we have the Patriots against the 49ers in San Francisco. The number is the Niners are favored by 10.5, and under over totals at 39.5. So to your credit here, I'm going to take the over in the points here. Really, that 39.5 is such a small number.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners could score 39 against the Patriots. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the Patriots getting like 3 points at least, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what I think is going to happen, but I see that number getting the over every time. I'm going to take the Patriots to cover, not to win. I think the Niners are going to win, but that number is way too big. I don't even care what's happening. I mean, the 49ers are kind of depleted, and they didn't get hammered. Like, they scored points, so they're not coming in. The Patriots, on the other hand, they didn't score points. So I do think that this Patriots team actually is going to cover, and I think it'll be a closer game than what people realize.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd take the Patriots to cover, actually, but I would take the under on the points. I think the Patriots defense will somewhat slow down the Niners offense, but I think the Niners will ultimately win. But I think Patriots will hold them to a conservative number. So I'd go under on the points and the Patriots to cover.
All right, the next game we have the Browns and the Raiders in Las Vegas. The Raiders are favored at 1, and the under-over total is at 37.5. So easy for me here. If it's not 40, I'm going to take the over here. I think it's just there's too much offense here, to be perfectly honest. So I would take the over on that. I would probably pick the Browns to outright win, even though I do think the Raiders could end up winning this game. When I look at a 1 and I'm not sure, I usually take the underdog just to kind of like cover my bases, really. So this really has nothing to do with like the Raiders or anything. I think the Raiders are going to come back a lot better. But I do think the Browns did just find a rhythm this past week, and so that makes me a little nervous. So I would take the Browns here.
I would go over on the points, but I would take the Raiders line, and I'd go over on the line. I think they're going to win by more than 1 point. I just don't trust the Browns' offense. I think the Raiders are going to come out and be a little bit more aggressive. And I'm also saying this as like good faith, but I think the Browns' offense is going to struggle. And this is Vegas. I think Antonio Pierce is going to have this team looking a lot better. So I'd go. I'd go over on the points, and I would go Vegas over on their line as well.
Okay, next game we have the Chiefs and Chargers in LA. The Chiefs are favored at 8, and under over line is at 39.5. So I'm going to take the over on that for sure. I'm going to pick the Chargers to cover, and I know that they may be without Justin Herbert. But I think a Jim Harbaugh team is going to run the football like crazy. So the score is not going to get out of hand. So for me, I think I would take the Chargers to cover, Chiefs to win.
So I'm going to take the line. I'm going to go over on the overall points, but I would actually take the Chiefs at the line as well. The reason why is because the Chargers are going to be without their first round pick at tackle. He's injured. He's probably going to miss the game. Herbert's probably going to miss the game. On defense, I'm pretty certain Joey Bosa's injured as well, and Derwin James isn't going to be there for this game. So I would go Chiefs at the points, and I would go over on the point total as well.
All right, so the next game we have the Bills against the Ravens in Baltimore. Baltimore favored at 2.5, and the under-over totals is 45.5. So I would actually take the over here. I think Baltimore's defense hasn't really shown much, and the Bills' defense really hasn't shown much. So I think the offenses are going to be fine here. I'm taking the Bills to not only cover but to win. I think the way that Josh Allen is playing right now, and the way that the Ravens have struggled offensively, even though Derrick Henry has been great. There's really no true number one receiver. I mean, honestly, the number one receiver for the Ravens so far has been Isaiah Likely. And for me, he's nice. He's all right. But, he's not even their number one tight end. So I just think the Bills right now, the way they've been rolling, I would pick them to win.
So I'm going to go over on the points, but I'm actually going to have Baltimore winning, but the Bills to cover. I think Baltimore is coming off of a huge win against Dallas. They're going to be in Baltimore. Baltimore is a really hard place to play in. I think Buffalo, their defense is a lot better than I think people get them credit for, but I just think with how Baltimore has been throwing the ball down the field, also running with Lamar and Derrick Henry, I think this is a game to where you're going to see Baltimore kind of come into form a little bit and get on a nice little 2-game winning streak. So I would have, again, Buffalo to cover, Baltimore to win though, and then I would take the over on the points.
So this is actually a game that I really, really like, and if I were a betting man, I would actually bet on this one. To be perfectly honest, it's the Titans against the Dolphins in Miami. Tennessee is favored at 1, and the under-over total is 37.5. So I'm going to bet the over on the 37.5. Honestly, the Titans have consistently been scoring like 24 points like every game. So right then and there's 24, and then whatever the Dolphins get, I think they're going to get at least to 38. So I would take the over on there for sure. But the Dolphins, not only am I going to pick them to cover, but I actually am going to pick them to outright win. And I really believe that the Dolphins, even though, Skylar Thompson, whatever, blah, 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 or if he's hurt, it's Tim Boyle. But the weapons that they have and what Will Levis has done is just very strange. And so and in Miami, the Dolphins are always good. I don't care who's at quarterback, to be honest. I think the Dolphins are just good at home. So I'm going to pick the Dolphins.
I'd go over on the points, and I'd take the Titans at the line. I don't know what the Dolphins are going to do at the quarterback position. I know that Miami's a good home team, but
Carson Wentz.
You know what? I take that back. I've talked myself out of it. I'm going Miami to outright win, but I'd go over on the points. Okay. Because of Will Levis, I'm going to say Mr. Mayonnaise in my coffee, Will Levis. He's gotten me out of it. I can't. I don't know
what if Miami signs Ryan Tannehill?
It doesn't do anything because he doesn't know the playbook. But it would help because, I mean, you can just throw it to Tyreek every time.
He used to play for Miami.
Well, not the same coaching staff.
And he used to play for Tennessee.
That's true. That would be what revenge game would that be?
That would be kind of funny. Anyway. Okay, so last game we have the Seahawks against the Lions in Detroit. Detroit is favored at 4, and the under-over is 46.5. So I'm actually going to bet the over on the total points. The way that these offenses have been scoring and these defenses have allowed scoring, I would go with the over on that. And I'm actually going to pick the Seahawks to cover, but I think the Lions will win this game. And I honestly see the Lions winning by like 3, and so that's kind of why I have the Seahawks covering. I think the Seahawks are coming off a really good win, but I don't think they've really been tested like the Lions will test them, and I think the Lions overall are a better team than the Seahawks. So.
I mean, I really like the Lions. I'm going to take the over on the points at 46.5, but I'd go with the Detroit line. I think they'll win more by 4. I think they'll probably win by like a touchdown. I feel like Detroit's defense is going to really put Geno Smith and that offense in a little bit of a bind. They really shut down the run. And I think, if Detroit can just find a way to manage DK Metcalf, this Seattle Seahawks team will be, an average football team. But I do see Detroit winning by more than 4.
All right. Well, that is it for us, folks. Thank you so much for hanging in there and listening to us. We appreciate it. I actually love those under-overs, and I think that was really good the way we did that. So hopefully we can do that again because that was quick, efficient, and unfortunately the other ones were not. So anyway, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, YouTube, whatever else you can follow us on. We're on there for ungodly known reasons. No, I'm just kidding. But just, go hit that follow, and we always want to interact with you guys. Actually, really like the TikTok that we put up, I want to say a couple of days ago where we had actually your cousin send us a question, and basically we answered it on the on the TikTok. Good God, I sound like I'm 50 years old now. But anyway, yeah, on TikTok, that was really cool. So I really like that video. So we want to continue to do more of those. So if you guys have any questions, send it to us, and we'll gladly answer it on there. So any final thoughts, Cody?
I'm glad we were able to do this, and behind the scenes, we've been having technical difficulties. So hopefully this episode sounds good. And so I've got, if it does sound good, then I've done my job editing. If not, then you guys may never hear this episode. It may not see the light of day. We'll see.
Yeah, right. You could not handle not sending it out. I know you too well for that, sir.
Yeah, probably. So.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And, probably won't see me next week, but who knows? Maybe you will. Maybe it'll be a win for me again. So I just was on my stuff today, getting all my homework done. So.
Yeah, we're back on the grind again next week. And then I think, do you have a Sanger West home game this week?
Yes. Sanger West against Hoover. Sorry, I was going to say Roosevelt, but that's who we just faced. So Hoover is coming into town. It's our homecoming game, and we also have elementary night. So, no, I'm sorry, not our homecoming game. It's our elementary night, and there's something else.
Homecoming is like October, isn't it?
Yeah, homecoming is October. That's why I have it on the brain. But anyway, so it'll be a real fun event. We'll enjoy some of the little kids. They're going to get to play at halftime. The feeder schools, and actually my daughter's elementary school is going to be there. So she's like already like, I want to go. So it'll be really fun. Sanger West ended up losing, and I'll have an episode pretty soon against Roosevelt last week. So I'll talk about that a little bit. And also basketball is in full force too. We have fall league right now. We actually just went 2-0 last week. Beat Fowler and Justin Garza, who's actually going to be in our division. So that's a really, really good win. Obviously, they probably don't have a full team like we do, but nonetheless, that is a big confidence builder for the boys. And we got 2 more games this Saturday. So a lot of Sanger West sports coming up.
Cool. Can't wait to hear it. That's on the Stingers Up podcast that you host. And so we'll get to hear all about it. I can't wait to hear. Yeah. And I can't wait to hear it from you firsthand as well. So,
all right, man.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Be kind to one another. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
See you.
See you.